Okay, go for it.
Okay, hodl, 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 save,
Build
build
a
a, build
build a
a,
build
build
a
a,
sound
sound
money.
money, sound
Sound
money.
money.
Guys, I got a special guest. This is a real Bitcoin standard bearer, and he is a superhero in the space, and he is a builder. He's not only a hodler and a saver, but he doesn't just build, he builds on Bitcoin. A lot of times, I just encourage you to build your own business, become the best at what you do. This guy's taken it to a whole new level. He set an example for what needs to be done within the nation states. And I know that I've been there, done that, and man, I take my hat off to you.
Mm.
So from there, I'm going to hand it over to Juan, and because he's the interviewer, I'm just an ugly old goat.
Well, thanks for thanks for that excellent introduction. Ugly, very enthusiastic. Sonny, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And you have, I mean, we met years ago in Toronto, and it's always struck me that you were, an entrepreneur, very high energy and very, obviously doing a lot of things in this space. But this story that we're going to talk about today is, I think, one of the most interesting stories in this space. And I think we can learn a lot from it. I expect we'll have to deal with similar situations in the future. So just to recap a little bit, you co-founded an exchange in India called Unocoin, and then had to live through the experience of having Bitcoin be banned and then fighting it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, maybe the founding of Unocoin, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Okay. So the founding of Unocoin. Okay, maybe just like 30 seconds on kind of where I'm coming from. So my parents are from India. I was born and raised in Canada, on the west side in Alberta, and I've spent the better part of the last 20 years in the eastern part of Canada, in Toronto, minus about 5 years when I spent in India. So my storyline: I studied electrical engineering. When I finished school, I kind of, like, in my first couple jobs, I always felt like there was like more month than money. You know what I mean? Like, after you get those first few paychecks, you're like, oh, I just wish there was a couple more less days in the month or something. And that really got me to ask a lot of questions around what is money, and eventually led me down a path of becoming a financial broker, like an advisor, air quotes. And at the end of that journey, I felt more confused about money than I did at the beginning of it. I felt like talking to all these people in fancy suits and using, fake math and all that. It just felt like, to me, I felt like nobody really had an answer, and they all had a different answer, and nobody could answer it. And so I left the financial world and then spent 8 almost 10 years working for a robotics company. I got to help outfit a lot of like the major robotics labs in the world. So I've seen like inside of, Stanford, for example, and Georgia Tech and NIT, IIT. And after a couple of years of working there in 2011, the CEO of that company was like, why don't you head out to India and help us kind of, forge our way forward. And I was living out in India in 2011. Somehow came across the Bitcoin white paper. I think it was through Twitter and YouTube. And do you know who what's his name? Da Vinci. Do you know who he is?
Vinci.
He's like kind of in a lot of the WhatsApp groups now and stuff, but he's trader, got a YouTube channel. He's a trader, and he's from not Edmonton. He's from Toronto area, I think. I think he went south, but anyway, so he was like kind of going on about it way back in the day, and it really caught my imagination. I had the 6 months of like hibernation, and then when I kind of came out of my slumber, I was noticing that in Toronto, where I was considering home at the time but was not in, I felt like I was missing out, because guys like Anthony, that's where you and I met, right back in Bitcoin Decentral, as he called it. We would all get together, and I felt like I was missing out on that, and so I essentially started, some of the first meetups in India, in Bangalore specifically, and really kind of, took it seriously, didn't just treat it like a meetup. We did a few things differently, such as, we hosted them at not coffee shops, but at like, have you ever been to India? Have you guys been to India? If you ever go, stay at what they call a 5-star hotel is like a 7-star hotel. Okay. Indian hotels. There's lots of parts of India that's obviously really challenging, I guess you could call it, right? But the hotels the service, everything is just insane. So anyways, we would have our meetups at these like places where they would pat you down, like, you know, it was like high security, high class, and we thought that's what, you know, Bitcoin represented. And that was kind of the beginning, you know, of Bitcoin in India for us. And it was through that I ended up meeting, you know, guys like Satvik and Harish and Abhi and all of them who, you know, were kind of, you know, they're interested in Bitcoin. And so we were all a bit like a match, you know, made in heaven. And that was really the beginning of our journey, you know, and we started tinkering and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know, where were you guys in 2012, 2011 timeframe?
Yeah, well, about that time, I think my son first mentioned Bitcoin to me, and then I noticed, you know, I heard about it when it, you know, first started trading, and then I heard about it somewhere, you know, when it traded above the dollar. I was an old gold bug. I mean, I physically minted a silver and gold coins back in the late 70s and all through the 80s, and did 11 years in prison. That's not the story of this show, but I have a very, let's put it this way, colorful past, to say the least. And but so I was into gold. I'm very familiar with the gold market. I knew what sound money was, and finally, it was August of 2013 that I read the white paper, and then, but I didn't really understand that because I'm not a back end guy, I'm not a technical guy, but I do know the economics. And when I figured it out and said, you know, that this had a limited supply and could not be duplicated, that was it. And then I knew this, and then it also had this wonderful little head and shoulders formation. You know, I couldn't buy Bitcoin fast enough. It was under $100. And that's when I got into it. And I've been sold ever since. I went just for a little while. I went down the shitcoin rabbit hole and figured out one of my old mentors. Well, I have two mentors. Probably my top two is E.C. Horowitz. My second one is F.A. Hayek. And of course, he wrote Denationalization of Money. And it was only after I did my research and I went and reread some of his articles, and he nailed it. He said, you know, it's competition in currencies and banking. It's not going to be competition on a standard. There's going to be one standard adopted, and that's where the competition is. And I mean, he really nailed it. And he had no idea, you know, that Bitcoin was coming. They realized if it did come, what the repercussions were going to be. Both he and Freeman did. So.
Hey guys, I'm gonna go on my story, but before I do, I'm just curious to know, just to call out the pink elephant, you know, what are your thoughts on this whole PayPal entering Bitcoin today?
Oh yeah, I just saw the news. So PayPal is saying that they're going to start processing Bitcoin and crypto payments and letting people use it as a currency.
I wasn't aware of it till Tone mentioned it, and I thought Tone Vaye's covered it extremely well, and I think he's absolutely correct. It's really not. It's kind of a non-issue because you can't get the Bitcoin out. You're going to have to hold the Bitcoin. You cannot send it to your private wallet, and they're going to have all the other shitcoins on there too. So it's really a step backwards and not a step forwards.
I mean, it's been pretty obvious to me for a while that the scaling is going to come in many different ways. The banks aren't just going to dissolve or disintegrate. They're going to still be there. All the payment processors are going to be there. Visa, MasterCard, they're still going to be there. And what's probably going to happen is they're just going to start processing Bitcoin denominated payments and such transactions or cryptocurrency transactions. That's what people want. But this custodial sort of takeover, this limitation of the withdrawal of the funds really concerns me. I think that's the sort of the dark pill. Like they're trying to reverse the Trojan horse, so to speak, because if all the Bitcoin ends up in custodial wallets, then they can do what they did, 70 years ago with gold, 90 years ago with gold, and it's just, attack a few parties and take over the market.
For the first time with all the stuff that's happened with the exchanges, with the action by the CFTC, and especially the criminal complaints with the Department of Justice, I'm really telling people, if most people in the United States, at least, they have their wealth tied up in their homes and their retirement accounts. And in my mind, and I have not been a big conspiracy theory or anything like that, but you know what? Those retirement accounts are sitting ducks. It's just like gold. The gold bugs, they have physical possession of their gold. It's distributed, but these retirement accounts, I think the legacy accounts are going to be in jeopardy as much as any of the Bitcoin exchanges, and it's probably only going to be a few of the very top exchanges. I think, again, this Department of Justice criminal case is, I call it the opening salvo in the Bitcoin war. At least it's a shot across the bow. And but I don't think we could have anybody better leading the charge than Arthur Hayes, because he really is top notch. You know, they were able to pick up one of the principles, and the rest of them were basically, you know, in
jurisdictions without extradition.
Unextraditable jurisdictions. I'm sure that they were taking those precautions all along. The criminal complaints really shocked me. I was expecting the CFTC, because that was from the competitors. I mean, Bitmex knocks the socks off of every other exchange that's ever existed. It was all kinds of new innovation there. And so the CFTC is basically run and dominated by the legacy commodity futures market exchanges. But the Department of Justice was really, it's the opening salvo by the central bankers themselves. And this is getting serious now. But I think, and that's why I say I really support Arthur Hayes, because I consider him, we could not have a better man, a better team at the tip of the sword right now, and we got to support it.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, not to take us on a detour, but I was just curious to ask you guys about that. But yeah, but you were asking about kind of like the founding of our company. And so really, you know, it was in these events that back in like whatever 2012, people would come to us and they would be interested in Bitcoin, right? They'd want to buy Bitcoin or get their hands on Bitcoin. And we had no real kind of like platform to do that. And so that was the genesis of our idea. And then really it all kind of culminated on December 2013, where we launched it at an event, like a large event that we did in Bangalore. And it was interesting because, you know, at that event, we launched the company, and it was also at that event that we ended up meeting the son of a gentleman by the name of Nishit Desai. And Nishit Desai is a bit of a legend in the sense that even before Bitcoin, well before Bitcoin, he's like this lawyer that has fought, you know, the good fight for payment processing in India, you know, for you know, a lot of investment that happens in India happens through kind of strategic means that him and his research team have uncovered years ago, and like hundreds of like crazy, like amazing things that they've done. And so it was his son that was in attendance at our event, and I met Surreal, and Surreal introduced me to Nishit. And it was and I remember Nishit is obviously, you know, his son is my age, and so he's far older than us, and he was schooling us about Bitcoin, and he was teaching us what, you know, and so yeah, and you know, and you know, without going into like every little detail. And by the way, a couple months later, you know, Barry Silbert had invested, you know, recently Tim Draper invested in Unocoin as well. We have a lot of kind of great investors that have come along the way. But 2 years ago, to get to the kind of the meat of the story, if you will, about 2 or 3 years, yeah, in 20, sorry?
You can take your time, man. I'm
yeah,
fascinated.
we're here for you, man. We want to showcase what you've done, and I'm listening, man.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, hit that like button and share the link. Okay? This is
right.
Get this out here, guys, because this is a real pioneer.
Yeah.
And you know, we're very fortunate because we live in Mexico, and another pioneers down here is Pablo Gonzalez and Ben and the guys that formed Bitso.
Yeah,
because it's a top-notch exchange. And guys, there's a lot of people that have tried this, and they've either failed or they've been out and out crooks. And you know, your reputation is everything. And you've had
so Barry's actually an investor in Bitso as well, and I know those guys, and I have a lot of respect for them. And they're good. I consider them friends. Yeah. And so yeah, I agree. It is a very hard business. But look, our goal from day one has always been to bring Bitcoin to the masses, to billions, right? Is what we say. And so. Yeah, so the genesis of the idea was that we just, you know, and initially though, I guess one thing that's kind of important to note is like, we didn't know where the opportunity for us was. And so instead of sitting on the sidelines, one thing we decided to do was to be, you know, scientific about it. And we decided to run little experiments, like where we would build things, not just have an idea and sit on it, but like build some MVP or whatever, right? Some small version of that product. and kind of put it out there and see, you know, what the, you know, are we making money? Is it like, you know, are people attracted to it? Is it even serving a need? And it was through that iterative process that we finally kind of, you know, stumbled upon this whole idea of, okay, well, why not build a platform where, you know, where people can, you know, send money from their bank accounts and they can essentially get their hands on Bitcoin.
Well, Unocoin is more than an exchange. Maybe tell us a little bit about.
So it started as a brokerage. I mean, I hate to use the example, but like, you know, the Coinbase of India, if you will, right? We were the first ones that started off with, you know, a wallet. So Barry, like I said, is one of our early investors. We also have an exchange as well, which is like an order book exchange, right? But our core offering has always been, and our mission has always been to just to, you know, have things like that for traders, because we know traders are going to want it. But really, it's for like everybody, right? Like it's for my mom and like my dad. It's like everyone that can just read and just click a few buttons and get their Bitcoin. And we always had it so that you can take your Bitcoin to your own wallet, or you could settle to like a wallet with an Unocoin. We obviously suggest people. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I think you're gonna ask.
No,
a question.
I'm just listening.
Yeah. So
is it limited? Is it limited jurisdiction just to people that are Indian citizens? Or?
In India, yeah.
Well,
so it is.
I figured that, you know, you got to do that, guys, to play the game. You know what? We still, you know, you may not like to deal with governments, but you live under a legal jurisdiction, and we do live under nation states and under laws. And you know, the thing is, my mentor is E.C. Harwood, and when I asked him, you know, what should I put on a gold coin, he said, for integrity, there is no substitute. So it's not just Bitcoin alone. It's going to take, you know, men like Sonny and women like Sonny that are developing ideas with integrity, you know, because if a king if you have a good reputation with the king, it goes well for you. You know, if you're out there just to piss them off, they got bigger guns generally than you do.
Right.
So you know, you do have to. There is a finesse to it, and we definitely believe. I definitely am a big believer in limited government, but I am not an anarcho-capitalist, and I always separate myself from the two.
Yeah. Well said. No. And so, look, I mean, for us, like I had explored a lot of, you know, whether it was like Occupy Wall Street, you know, whether it was like Ron Paul or, you know, the whole spectrum in between. I had always identified with, you know, this like questioning of like the source of like power and money, and it's just like, it was always kind of silly to me though that we do all agree that these pieces of paper that normally are worth nothing and that are in infinite supply, if we just put somebody's face on it, it'll be worth something. I thought that was like, that's pretty interesting, and it was like a hallucination that we all shared. But you know, it just also told me that maybe there was a better way, you know, maybe this was invented a long time ago. That anyways, so and the other thing that I found startling, like again, like I'm born and raised in Canada, so I almost feel like a white man in an Indian person's body sometimes, right? But one thing I noticed when I moved to India is like the number of people that were buying gold. So when it's payday, there's literally a lineup on every 10th door down the store market or whatever, people buying gold. And that was weird because, you know, in Canada, North America, gold isn't really a big thing, right? And so when we discovered Bitcoin in the early days, and by the way, my wife is from Colombia, from like, you know, just south of Mexico there. And so, and hence the name Unocoin, right? Uno, we thought, well, Bitcoin was the one. It was kind of like, it was the one coin that'll all bring us together. And we thought, well, Unocoin could kind of like serve that purpose. But yeah, anyway, so initially it just started with that genesis of an idea is how do we just bridge the gap so anybody in India could get their hands on Bitcoin? I do remember though, a week after we launched our company, there was a notice put on the central bank's website saying that it was essentially a warning, you know, to the country saying, look, we know that these things exist like Bitcoin, these cryptocurrencies. We think they're highly, I'm paraphrasing again, but they're highly volatile and there are concerns around security. Those were the two kind of main points. And that notice essentially resurfaced itself like copy paste a few times throughout the years, right? So whenever things would flare up, it would be that, you know, maybe with some different assets listed on there. But the idea was they were just warning the public. It was really in 2017, you know, it's funny you brought up the ICO thing. I actually kind of feel like it fed some of that fear and you know, and whatnot for regulators as well, in addition to the rujas of the Unocoins of the world, like the hardcore straight up scammers, you know, that were just going on in front of our eyes. And it's like, I've just seen so much like of this, you know, bullshit that, you know, whether it's like Quadriga in Canada, I mean, it's just like on and on and on, that this is why I'm just being more active, and I'm going to start creating more content myself. And when you guys gave me the opportunity, I jumped at it.
That's an interesting side story. Maybe we can get into a little bit later, the Quadriga thing. But
oh man, I'm down to go down any
guy,
rabbit hole.
I had dinner with that guy a couple of times, you know, like he was hanging out and everything. But anyway,
I have a story there. I'm a little afraid to talk about it because I mean, man, if he
we get more established, we'll do that one.
We can leave that one.
Maybe on another one, because that's we wanted to think through that one a bit. I mean, the last thing I want is a dead rich guy after me.
Why the story disappearing?
If you know what I mean. But yeah, we had but it's scary, you know, and I don't want people to get screwed. And I love Bitcoin, and I put, you know, my kind of reputation on the line with Bitcoin. I mean, now it seems kind of obvious with PayPal and all these guys, you know, but, you know, to attend, I mean, 11, or what is it, 2011, 2012, like it was like people would like laugh at you. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're going through a stage. We're separating the wheat from the chaff. That's what we're doing, man. And you are merging as the wheat. And you know, and you know what? Some of the chaff we kind of welcome them back. That's why I'm not really. I'm down. I mean, I always condemn the shit coins and all that, but you know, they can learn, and when they figure out, you know, Bitcoin is the standard, and that we're for competition, and we don't rule out, okay, maybe there's a better standard that exists. But we're not competing for that. We have no problems accepting the one that is. Right. And that's where the future is. Once you can get that concept, you can really move on and take it to the next level. And it's, you know, that's what's exciting about this.
I really agree. And, you know, I'm lucky because I also, having like being from Toronto, right? That's how Juan and I met. I also saw Ethereum's birth, right? And I'm close to people like Anthony Diorio. And, you know, so I got to be a part of even the other sides of it. And so I feel very fortunate, you know, and you know, being so close and getting a front row seat on a lot of the innovation or lack thereof. You know, I think it's important that we get on there and talk about it. But I do agree.
You kind of have to see what's wrong with a lot of the copycat kind of copy paste altcoins and all these different projects, and see what the risks are before you can really integrate. Standards, so to speak.
And you know, with a name like Unocoin, you'd think we would do an ICO like back in the day, right? But we didn't, because we had serious concerns around just raising money for a speculative business from your next door neighbor. Like, simply put, forget the regulatory mumbo jumbo. Like, I don't want to take, you know, 50 grand of 100 grand that my neighbor saved over his 30-year career. I don't even want a chance of that happening. Therefore, we go to the Barry Silberts of the world and the Tim Drapers of the world, because they can take that risk, because they have, you know, they're anyways. Okay, but our you know, it was funny because even when Barry had reached out to us in the early days, I don't think Satvik even took it seriously. He like maybe deleted his email or something, because he thought, okay, well, you know, why would anyone want to give us money for this like Bitcoin venture that we're doing, right? But Barry was a very, very early believer in Unocoin, and without, you know, his belief, I don't think we'd really be where we are. But our story, like in terms of the timeline, you know, really, it's just a story of what I told you about how we found Unocoin. We just carried forward with that same scientific approach, where we have ideas, we throw them up against the wall. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's what we did. So, for example, as you guys know, you know, it's not just a digital gold narrative. Bitcoin has another element which a lot of people overlook, which is that you can send Bitcoin like a teleporter, you know what I mean? It's like imagine a gold with a teleporter. Like, you can just send it across space and time and do it like instantly and all that. And so that property is called remittance to some extent, right? And India is the biggest inward remit, not only the largest gold, right? Bugs or whatever, like the biggest hoarders of gold live in India, but also the largest inward remitter, like meaning people like my dad who have moved away from India, sending, money back to their parents, etc., is like India's number one. And what we started noticing is it wasn't people like my grandmother, right, or people like that age that were doing it, but like IT professionals. So technical people that would say, hey, when I use PayPal, it takes me forever to get paid. Western Union and all these other things take me a week. I lose $100. I lose all this. But when I use Bitcoin, it's like instantaneous and it's like right away and I get the money in my bank and it's seamless. And so one of the things we said, okay, but one of the problems that people had was they said, but when I get paid, let's say in the middle of the night, when I wake up, maybe the price of Bitcoin's dropped or, or whatever. And so now I don't get the same amount. So we created a Bitcoin address that allows to like an auto sell function, right? Where people could just sell it and get the money in their bank account and not have to worry about it. But little things like that, I won't, go into, but e-commerce, whether it's like, an app for your store, your online store, or your physical store, or, the order book exchange or lending or this or that, there's like literally maybe like 100 different things that kind of goes into like the whole Unocoin platform. But we have another thing called systematic buying plan, where every day, week, or month, you can just set it and you just pick up some Bitcoin. You don't have to like be emotional about it. You can just like do it, in a certain way where if the price drops, you're happy because you're buying more. If it goes up, you're still happy because you have Bitcoin.
Dollar cost averaging.
Bitcoin cost averaging.
Nice.
So we have things like that we've built now years ago, like the list of, like I said, maybe 50 or 60 different things, but that are all based on things that we've learned and, and kind of like built on top of that. Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. Number one, I didn't know that. I thought Mexico was by far the biggest remittancer, but that must be from the U.S. Maybe globally it's India. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes. And I think Mexico's number 2, but I'm 99% certain.
Think of that from the U.S., but yeah, globally I can see that. My next question is, here in Mexico, most of the people don't have bank accounts, and but we have this system of convenience stores. They're called OXXO, and so I know that's how Bitso has been able to. Basically, they use the convenience store as their bank, so the money transmitting is going on, through through the exchanges now to the OXXO stores. I was wondering, in India, is it much the same way where most people don't have banks? And have you addressed that demand? Or
that's a great question. That's something we do think about a lot. But just before I even talk about us, I was going to say another company in the Philippines called coins.ph. They have, I don't know, in my eyes, kind of set the standard on like addressing the last mile, if you will, in a way that I haven't seen done. But I mean, it sounds like what the guys in Mexico are doing something similar.
Yeah, that's number 3, I guess. Philippines,
yeah.
India, Mexico, and Philippines.
Yeah. No, okay, so we do allow things like phone bill pay and top-ups, but fundamentally our platform, fortunately or unfortunately, and it's because we wanted to start with the lion's share of where we thought the business would be, is kind of connecting to the banking network. My next part of the story will show how that is a vulnerability, right? And as entrepreneurs, we are now very much awake to the fact that we need to be more resilient. So I got to share. So fundraises, we grew to about 1.5 million users. We were onboarding about 10,000 users a day at our peak in 2017.
That's incredible.
Like, it was awesome. And then the party came to a bit of a screeching halt when the central bank essentially said, look, and I'm paraphrasing again, but they said, look, banks are not allowed to work with Bitcoin companies, and they systematically made sure that wasn't possible, where we couldn't serve our customers, and it was
what year was this?
This is in where are we now? Almost in 2017, 2018 timeframe. Right. Yeah, around there.
So did you build this huge organization to handle all this business, and it just kind of boom?
Yeah, we had to like literally lay off almost 100 people, I think maybe about a year and a half ago. It was brutal. Tears were shed. It was awful. It was awful. But just to kind of continue on the story, about like 6 months into this whole court case now, right? So now we're fighting this in court.
Sorry. So that's what the news we're calling the Bitcoin ban is. It was a separation of the banks.
Yeah, just to be clear, it wasn't a Bitcoin ban per se. It was more because like a Bitcoin ban to me is when the country says Bitcoin is banned, right?
Right.
And that's not technically what happened. That's something we can talk about as well, because that's kind of in the horizon. You know, we're hoping that, you know, the continued fight and the growth of the community and PayPal and the whole world accepting it. Like, I think the central banks are going to start holding Bitcoin in their balance sheets, but that's for another conversation.
Wow.
You know, I mean, they will, right? I mean, eventually,
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. But I mean, they're going to go through whole the central bank.
They'll be the last ones,
right? But
they'll be
then,
buying the bags.
But anyway, so what happened was, so it was a bank ban where the banks and the payment processors weren't allowed to touch cryptocurrencies. And so what we did is we challenged that. You know, we challenged that. Initially, it was in the high court, and then, you know, all of our kind of cases got put into one case at the Supreme Court level, and then they just said, okay, we'll deal with all of these crypto bank cases together. And then there was this.
How many years was that from the time that you initiated that litigation to the time you finally got a decision? Because people really need to understand.
It was years. It was like a year and a half to 2 years. And I just want to be clear, like, you know, even though I'm here kind of telling the story, you know, the fight was actually fought by my co-founders, right? So Harish and Satvik, these were the guys that were on the ground that did a lot of the hard work. And, you know, and we'll be sharing more of these over time. And maybe these guys might even be able to join us today or another call.
A year and a half was quick. That's a miracle that you could do. I mean, because some of these things never get settled, never get addressed, and they usually take much more than a year and a half. So you guys really were on the ball and were really pushing this.
Yeah, and this is a gargantuan effort. I'm sure it was the whole community of
it was, and I've been interviewing a lot of people. Like people that were like, there was, for example, this team called Crypto Kanun. You can look them up on Twitter. They're kind of like crypto, and then Kanun means law, right? And so they're like this law, like they're good. They're a good group, and they were literally tweeting in real time as the court case was happening. I don't think that's I've never seen that happening in real time. Like every word, they were tweeting this stuff. And I'm interviewing all these guys, and I'm gonna be releasing those videos soon as well. And it is insane because it's not just us. Like, you know, sorry, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I said this is so great because you set the model. What you're just telling me now, it opens up the whole thing. You know, like I say, I think this criminal suit against Bitmex is an opening salvo of a Bitcoin war. You know, and you've set the model how we need to do this thing, because we need to be transparent. We have not done anything wrong doing this stuff. You know, it's our government's. The reason you can't trade on Bitmex is because of United States laws, and you need to wake up the citizenry. That's the way we got to change these things. And I mean, what you just told me, that's a topic for a whole show in itself.
Yeah.
This is where we got to go, man. I mean, this is the example. You have set the groundbreaking. You're the bulldozer that's building the road for the rest of us.
Yeah, and so yesterday, actually, in fact, when I interviewed Kashif, who's one of the guys behind Crypto Kanun, he was telling me the story of like in the courtroom, you know, and like what they were doing, and how Harish, one of the Unocoin co-founders, was like at one point really the only person from like the exchange industry really there fighting the good fight, like every morning, every night, you know, financially, time-wise, and you know, it's kind of like, one of the reasons I'm trying to do more like media stuff is not because I want to do it. It's because I want other people to be like, hey, look, it's actually possible, you know, and get other people involved, because the last thing we want is like one or two people just depending on them to like help, right?
My number one mentor is E.C. Harwood, who founded the American Institute for Economic Research, who now Jeffrey Tucker, I think, runs it.
Right.
This is very important, because this is exactly what E.C. Harwood did with gold, and he did this, you know, in the SEC. They tried to shut him down. In fact, he did
so he would buy gold for people and put it in a Swiss bank account, and then let them hold the paper in the United States, and then the SEC hit them, saying that it's those security and so on.
Yeah, I'll send you. In my articles, I actually linked to an old Reason article back in the 1980s where he kind of goes into the whole thing. But I'm telling you, there's nothing really new under the sun. And I really think we need to go back and look at what was done there. And I think we ought to get Jeffrey Tucker on this thing.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Tucker. I've met him a few times, but I love his work.
Bit of a shitcoiner, but we can rearrange him.
I think a lot of people got pulled into that black hole. It's hard. It's hard. Sometimes it feels like you're in a tornado. Like even for us as a company, I've always felt like I'm like on a personal note, like a bit of a Bitcoin maximalist, and I've tried to kind of stick to the straight and narrow.
The Bitcoin standard bearer. We don't adopt their terms. Now that was the term.
Right. Bitcoin standard bearer. I like that one.
There you go.
You can get one of these ones, maybe.
Yeah, that's what we are back here.
That's pretty badass. I think it's hard because there's like a lot of forces that pull you in different directions. And then for us, at one point, like a lot of Bitcoin exchanges in India, they just launched like the cheapest coin or like the shittiest coin you'll ever just to drive volume or whatever. And that at one point, customers would say, okay, well, do I want to go where there's like, 100 options or where there's only one thing? Yeah. And they were almost making their decision on that. So we had to, almost reluctantly expand a bit. But that to me is still like, I'm so excited about Bitcoin. And, I'm calling my whole show thing that I'm doing Bitcoin stories as well. I'd love to, interview you as well. Old goat, man. You're famous because I know Tone. Tone's a good friend of mine, by the way. And I know he was a big fan of your work. Tone Vaye. I used to do big events in Toronto. Like I'm talking like 1,000 people at the Sheraton. And Tone was one of my highlights. Like he would come up.
Yeah. I wouldn't be doing this if he hadn't encouraged me. I put it on. Because I was maintaining because of my past history, just want to have a low profile. I said, no, you got to get this out. And I'm so glad it is. Like my whole life now is the calling, and I don't have that many years left, but hopefully the Lord will give me enough that, I can get the story out. And because this has, before Bitcoin, I was locked up. Believe me, you talk about how lonely it was when Bitcoin came out back in the 70s and 80s when gold was out there. We were really nutcases, and particularly Austrian economics. And, when I came out and then I got Bitcoin, I couldn't believe the widespread knowledge there was now and acceptability of Austrian economics. It's just like, it was like Rip Van Winkle. I could have never imagined back then that we would have this upswell of understanding money and what sound money is. Now we don't have it down yet, and then we're all experimenting and getting, trying to get it down, and we all make mistakes and are learning from each other. But I'm just amazed at what's going on now. And like I said, I was just out of it for over a decade, and then it's I just want to encourage you guys. You guys are, you got to carry this ball. It's your responsibility, and it's what you're doing that is going to bring us back sound money. If we're hodlers, if we are our own bankers, we need to start acting responsibly as bankers. And we don't know how to do that. We're going to have to, as my mentor said, he wrote an article called The Lost Art of Commercial Banking. We have to relearn what banking was really about, because the innovation in the 19th century was the development of gold banking. Not the gold standard was not just gold. That was a gold standard. It was banking. It was the regulation of the money supply, and the banks figured out how to do it through self-liquidating commercial paper, which is money, non-inflationary money creation and
you know about Bretton Woods, right? Obviously.
Yeah. Yes.
So did you guys hear that they're renegotiating Bretton Woods like yesterday or something? Like, did you guys hear about that? What are your thoughts on that?
I heard something about it. Maybe tell us more about what you think's happening there. I heard something.
Simon Dixon, you know Simon?
Simon
from Bank to the Future. He did a piece on it. I can forward it to you over DM, which is so on point. But guys, there are some big things happening like right now.
Right now, yeah.
Well, this is what I said. Gold still has its feature, and I'm extremely bullish on gold. Incidentally, Bitcoin, and then secondarily gold. I think you use Bitcoin as collateral to buy gold, and that's how you can get some leverage on it. Mm-hmm. But I think that gold still has its uses, because it is physical. Mm-hmm. It is great for jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin has no jurisdiction, and that's the difference. And that's what keeps we need to have competing jurisdictions. And that's what Hayek was talking about.
Yeah.
He was talking about, denationalization of money. But if you read the book, it's not just money, but it's a banking. And that's what you're basically going to have. The free market money is going to compete with the government money, and it's going to keep the governments honest. It's going to bring sound money back to governments, because from time to time we've had it. Once you do that, then Bitcoin will be less significant, because I don't need Bitcoin anymore, because I can trust my government again.
For a while.
Yeah, I always say like, I talked about Occupy Wall Street, we talked about Ethereum, we talked about, now there's DeFi, there was ICOs, there was like fiat, like there's all these things. But the thing I like about Bitcoin is that it allows me to kind of focus on one thing instead of trying to fight like a million battles. You know what I mean? Like, it's too exhausting.
No, we have to focus
it's like Bitcoin stands for something. And here's my thinking around like other projects. I do love them, and I encourage. So I'm like a free market enthusiast first and foremost. So I love the free market, and I want to see it succeed. And coming from that perspective, anybody should be able to do whatever they want as long as they're not harming others, like intentionally, right? Like physically or whatever. So in that vein, go to it. But on a personal note, if you're going to try and bring free markets to the world, you need to solve money.
Kind of an important
and money is one half of every transaction. And so if you're not like laser focused on trying to fix money, then I think you don't have a free market. And so anyway, so I think that
money is a lot more than a payment process. It's a lot more than processing a payment. Like money is much more.
And it's not even about replacing anything. Even the words like, "Oh, we're here to replace the fiat system." Look, I have no beef with people who love fiat. Like you're free to love it if you want it, right? Like, please enjoy it. But if you're down
processing, not replacement, but
exactly. But if you're down to like, learn a little bit of math and figure out how economics works, and if you see the light with Bitcoin, you should also be able to, participate. And that was really the fundamental point. Couple of side notes I was just going to share as well.
And we'll get back to the story.
Yeah, the story. I'm kind of interweaving, current events.
Focus on you and not all this other stuff. You need to tell us your story.
No, I'm going to do it. I'm getting to it. So back, about the story thing. There were like 5 major legal point that the court case obviously revolved around. And it's like there's a 200-page document, and there's a beautiful like 5-minute summary, by the way, by the girl named Tanvir on YouTube, which I can share over DM. You can share with your users if they're interested in like kind of digging deep. But there are
we'll put all those on the links to this.
Perfect.
Very important video.
Excellent.
It will be circulating a long time.
There's a lady
you want to put on there. Just give it to one, and we'll get it on there.
Awesome. So I'll provide that. But there are like people who've done far better job than me at kind of articulating those points. And again, we can even do another show if you guys want, where we go deep into each of those points as if it's like, useful. But I will say one thing is that one of the final questions that the judges asked was, okay, you guys, and I'm paraphrasing again, you guys are fighting, this kind of on a constitutional basis. You're saying that this bank ban is unconstitutional, but we see this like entity called the IAMAI, which is like the face that was like the organization that was actually fighting the battle. Then we see these companies like ours and others, right, that are part of it. But like when you talk about the Constitution, it applies to people, right? So show us an example where like a person's life was negatively impacted, and and then maybe we can like really have a case here. And it was really Harish, so Unocoins co-founder, who most people don't even know about. It was his story and us, everything that happened to him and our business. And there's a whole, you probably heard about the kiosks, right? So in the midst of all this, like, I'm just rewinding a bit here. So before the court case came to a conclusion, so I'm talking like a year and a half ago, we were like, okay, if you think about it from first principles, Bitcoin doesn't need a bank, right? I mean, that's the whole point, kind of, sort of like, so you don't need a bank. So what we thought to ourselves as engineers, as entrepreneurs, is that what if we just like helped our 1.5 million customers get Bitcoin by coming to a kiosk Like, you know, and we're like, hey, to de-risk kind of all the different elements, we'll buy the same damn ones that the banks buy. Like, though we can't call them ATMs, right? We call them kiosks because they're not officially ATMs, but they're the same machines that the banks buy. So we thought, why don't we just buy one or two and then roll it up to a couple hundred, and just make it so that our customers can come, and we'll do KYC on them. We'll make sure we know who we're dealing with. So if there is law enforcement that needs to, like, you know, if there's something bad that's happening, we can still like be on the right side of the law, but we don't technically need banks. And you know, to our dismay, you know, somebody on the internet took a picture of it a week before, mind you, a week before we even went live with the machine. And I'm being clear about this so that people know that we couldn't have, even if we wanted to do something bad or wrong, we couldn't have. Our machine wasn't even operational. A week before we launched, someone took a picture of it. It went viral on the internet. The news media picked it up. It went viral on the kind of the news cycle. And you know, 2 police officers decided to come and take our machine away. And for like a limited period of time, they were let out, you know, a day later, our lawyer, because they had nothing to hold them on. But even Harish and Satvik went through a lot of hardship during that time. I bring up this story only because, to fast forward back to this final court case, that kind of whole process was also brought up, and you know, and all of this was looked at, and you know, and all 3 judges essentially said, look, we don't think the bank ban is constitutional, and they got rid of it. And again, one of my, and I know even coming online and stuff for an entrepreneur like me is risky because you open yourself up to, you know, regulators scrutinizing you. But I felt like it was more important to put a spotlight on what these guys have done than, you know, just hide. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
You want to put, you don't want to, you know, I wear a mask going out in public. That's not a battle worth fighting. But some of these Bitcoin, you want to choose a hill that you are willing to die on.
Yeah.
And kind of my hill is what's going on now. I just see this. We can't run away from what's going on. When they brought the criminal indictment against Bitmex, that raised my eyebrows. And they don't need our financial help. They don't need. You know, they know what they're doing, but they need our moral support. And they say, hey, we're there for you. And the best thing you can do is preserve your own wealth and make sure you're not too exposed on any of the exchanges. I mean, I'm sure, you know,
definitely
any of them you want
Cold Card, Trezor, Casa, whatever, man. I love all of them, and people should definitely hold their own private keys. And like I said from the beginning, we have that like as an option to take your money off.
Like I say, for the first time, I'm warning people, you know, if you have too much just in your house, in your IRA account, your retirement fund, you need to, you know, I wouldn't have any problem just selling the whole thing out, pay the tax and get out. Because I think that it's a sitting duck right now. And hopefully it never happens. Tone disagrees. He doesn't see it happening. I hope he's right, but the risk is so great that at the very least, if those are your assets, you should be moving at least 5%, maybe as much as 15% of your wealth into Bitcoin. It just, you know, that is your insurance policy.
I've always said too. Yeah, but have you guys read like Nassim Taleb's work or anything like that, like the Black Swan? And I always used to recommend, even though I don't take my own medicine, but I always tell people that they should at least have like 1%, because we're a bit heavy on crypto because we really believe in it. But for everyone else, like at least it's like an insurance, right? Like you said, you know, it's an insurance.
Well, I really like Michael Saylor's approach to this recently. He says, like, first of all, if you compare Bitcoin to the S&P and other assets just in 2020, like the volatility isn't that high compared to everything else. Like it is not that much more volatile than the stock market, right? The COVID crash took everybody down, right? And then a lot of them are back. Like they're actually quite correlated in many ways. And so he's taking a much more, a very different approach, and I think innovative approach. And I think we should definitely pay attention to what he's saying in that regard. You know, the 3 categories, saying categorize Bitcoin is not a currency right now. It's a store of value sort of asset. It's kind of very much like gold, right? So call it a crypto asset, right? And then the Ethereum, all that Ethereum stuff is they're crypto apps. They're, you know, more speculative, more riskier, fundamentally different than a store of value asset in a currency. And then the currencies are Tether and USDC and all these sort of fiat currencies that are
right.
actual
Yeah,
currencies,
I
right?
said that
I think
tweet.
that's brilliant. That's
He's like
great
someone
analysis.
referred to him as the Chad or whatever of Bitcoin. There's always, I like him. I like him a lot. And that's what I love about Bitcoin is that nobody freaking owns it. There is no leader. You know what I mean? Today it's you,
Well,
tomorrow it's Michael Saylor, yesterday was me. It was like everyone can run with it. Everyone feels like it's theirs. And I love the fact that Satoshi just walked away from the project. I think that's such a boss move. Hey guys, listen, I want to be mindful of your time. I know we're running up to the end of it. In terms of my story, like I kind of gave you the highlights. Look, the great news is we're back now. We won the day after the court case kind of concluded. We got access to our bank accounts. You know, our customers are now able to buy Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin, whatever they need to do. And we just raised a round of financing from Tim Draper. I mean, we're super excited about that. And yeah, I mean, you know, we're just going to keep going down this path. And thank you for, you know, having me on the show. If there's anything else you guys want to ask, I guess we got like a minute or two.
I appreciate it. I mean, I still have some questions. And
yeah, if you guys have time, I'm good. I can go for a bit
longer. We got time as well.
We're good. We, you know, we might even edit this into a couple of shows of an hour, like, because this is so good right now.
Yeah, I'm game.
We
put it at an hour for your time, but we can easily go for two. We usually go for like 1:45, and that's when everything kind of.
When I heard what Juan had arranged this, I was really excited about it, and I did a show with Tone this morning, and he says he really pushed it, so he's really excited.
I love Tone. Yeah, I'm a good big. You know, back in the day when I used to do these events,
he really thinks a lot of you. He really does. And
I'm a big fan of Tone as well. You know, he's my saving grace in some ways, because when I used to do these big events, you know, in Toronto, the ICO thing is a bit of a thing, because obviously Ethereum was founded here and a lot of people were gravitating towards it. And so one thing I made sure is that even if there were like any ICOs on stage, I put Tone on there with them. So it's like buyer beware. Here's some exciting stuff, but buyer beware. Here's Mr. Tone Wings, and he would go and have his piece. I loved it. No, I think it's important that people make, you know, very educated decisions. And like, you know, Juan said, some of them are very speculative assets that are very experimental. I think even Bitcoin is experimental. Like, I think if you listen to the smartest people, they'll even admit that
I actually wrote an article that Bitcoin, you know, is a lousy store of value and sex is cash. You know, because it is. And I actually got that from Jason Seibert, he was the one that got on Chris Rose and said, "Hey, you're right. It is." But it's a speculation. It's a fundamental speculation, a good sound speculation.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's why we dollar cost average into it. You know, it's unpredictable. It's volatile. It's an experiment. It may or may not work. But you know what? It's the only hope we've got right now as far as resurrecting sound money.
And you know, lately I've been kind of equating it. I've been trying to like really nail down what is it that I'm buying with Bitcoin. I think it's freedom, right? That's like fundamentally what I feel like I'm acquiring. And that's why I feel like it's like a one-way street almost, not even like a buy and sell. I mean, I had to sell, in times in my life, but I always went on to regret it. And it's taught me to save more and not spend as much. And I feel like it's also a way to reverse the hands of time. Like I said at the beginning of this meeting or this interview is that, you know, when I used to first like work and my whole frame of mind was in the fiat world, I felt like a hamster because you just couldn't get ahead, like with inflation and everything kind of working against you. You're just like, but Bitcoin, it's like the opposite. And it just like, you know, it just reverses everything. And now all of a sudden, you know, with every day you feel like
it's one thing I want to start. I'm working with one of my followers and members. I said, because I'm not good at researching a lot of this stuff, and a lot of my followers are much better, you know, in fundamentals and TAs. But you know, I'm very interested in you know, these stocks, particularly with Michael Saylor's, then there's Square, all the companies that if they're holding Bitcoin. You don't dare go short that stock. It's really going short protection, you know. So it may not go up, but you know, it's not gonna go to zero. You've got a built-in hedge buying those stocks.
So
as long as they know the security of how to keep Bitcoin.
Yeah. And this is kind of like a hype moment again. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I feel confident that Bitcoin's going to probably hit some all-time highs and break through them. But, people, again, buyer beware, right? Bitcoin is experimental. And the best way is, if you really believe in it, then you kind of, dollar cost average and put a tiny bit. Like, you don't even need to put more than $10. I think a lot of people think you have to buy one Bitcoin. You don't. And just to like play with it, really. It's just like, and it's fun and exciting. So what else you guys got? Any other questions you want to ask about the Unocoin journey? Yeah, I know I've had a lot happen with Kraken. I worked at Buttercoin. I've had a lot of kind of detours along the way. I don't work there anymore.
You're an entrepreneur, and like we were very interested in entrepreneurship in general. And I think, I mean, I would like to see like a Bitcoin entrepreneurship conference in the not too distant future. And I mean, we'd love to have you on, and we'd love to have you on to talk about entrepreneurship in the Bitcoin space itself, because that's, I think, a really important topic that doesn't get discussed anywhere. I just want to, before we move on though, like I want to touch on this, on the court case a little bit more, because that was such an interesting insight. So to recap, the court said to you, well, you guys are raising a constitutional defense here, but you're all representing companies. Show me which individuals had their rights violated. And then one of the core founders, sort of him being imprisoned because of this ATM and so on, that was part of the defense. It was like, okay, well, clearly his rights to were violated here. Maybe, I mean, that's a really interesting argument, and I'm very
and I think there's a lot of other kind of obviously mega points that have kind of preceded all this, right? And I'm just gonna paraphrase some of them, but just some of them were just things like one of the things that I think the lawyers did really well. And then again, there's this 200-page document, and there's a girl who does like in-depth kind of pieces on this, which I recommend people. But one of the things was just like, bringing in international examples of like how Bitcoin was being regulated, instead of how most countries around the world were not, choosing to ban Bitcoin, but instead figure out a way to responsibly regulate it. That was like, and again, that was like one kind of line of thinking. Another, so like this, I think the lawyers deserve, a ton of credit, like for really doing their research, not only on a technical level, but looking at kind of the global movement as it is, and how it would, be detrimental. And I think, and another thing that I wanted to mention is that I don't know how judges come to be, or especially in India, but like, it strikes me that these people, or some of these people, maybe we got lucky, seem to be very like normal and very grounded and rooted in principles that at least I can identify with. And that was one of my takeaways as well, is like, okay, well, we won, so-called, but it's like, well, who are these like judges that like decide our fate, and how is it that
the case law in the United States, and I've argued this too, but basically, case law, it is the duty of a judge to protect constitutional rights. It is not the duty of your attorney to do that. And that's why I say, that's why I kind of, I have a lot of good friends that are attorneys, they're good guys and all this, but I equate them to, if I lived at when the country was founded, I'd have friends that were slave owners. Hopefully I wouldn't have slaves, I'd be against it. But that's why I consider, because once you have that bar, they all have that ESQ, which is a title of nobility, which is clearly prohibited in the Constitution, and yet they have to adopt it. If I go and try and represent somebody and cross that bar, I'm in contempt and I go to jail immediately. And their duty is not to protect the constitutional right. Their ultimate duty is to protect the integrity of the court. And it's up to the judges to decide what a constitutional right is. So you need that. So you've nailed it. That is a law. The law supports what you're saying, and I think that judges are important. I think the Supreme Court is important, but it's the judicial system and all this the bar and all this. That's the crap we built around it statutorily. Got things screwed up. And I said, you know what? I don't want to. I'm just saying it should be like anything else. You can be an attorney and you can have that ESQ, but if you have it, you're a second-class citizen. You shouldn't be allowed to have public office. You shouldn't be allowed to be a judge. You shouldn't be allowed to legislate. if those, just like if you're a felon, you can't own a gun, and so if you decide, you can have that title of nobility, but you're a second-class citizen. You're not like the rest of us citizens who, have the inalienable rights. You want to be that special noble. Okay, you've got to you give up something the rest of us don't have. Kind of a little backwards thinking. It's not going to be my battle, but it's something that
Interesting.
I think it's a battle that will be fought maybe generations hence.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Hey, one, I just want to say I just shared Tanvi Ratna's summary in the chat here as well. And you guys can maybe throw it up on afterwards or whatever, so people can read through it. But I think, and there's also a link to her Medium article which breaks down the actual like intricacies of it. I'm just kind of storytelling and telling the parts that I find most interesting, but people are going to want more meat on this, and links to everything are right there. And like I said, she's just so on point, and she's more of like a third party that's like a regulatory expert talking about these things. So I think it's best that people read her stuff because it's good.
Yeah, it's a whole, it's a whole specialty in itself. The law is complicated.
Yeah, it is. No, I appreciate the introduction to the topic, kind of like the refresher and the insider review of it. I think it's really interesting. I'm definitely going to look into it more, and I would love to have some of the American kind of lobbyists and like the coin center guys, maybe have them on and just talk to them about this, because I mean, I think this, like, why isn't this happening in the United States? Who's doing legal defense for Bitcoin in the United States? If it's happening, I'm sure it's happening. It's not very visible, and I'd like to kind of shine some light on it, because I think we're gonna see. Obviously, there's big moves happening, right? Like you're just saying that they're renegotiating Bretton Woods. I mean, it's pretty hard to get any deeper than that. And obviously, the Bitmex move is also important. I mean, you want to talk a little bit more about the Bretton Woods? What are your thoughts on what's going on there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just because I kind of didn't go too much into that last question, but I just wanted to just touch on a couple of things here. So on the RBI case, right? So in essence, the debates like in the court revolved around a few core questions, right? So one of them was, did the action by the RBI violate like a specific article of the Indian Constitution and impact the right to work for petitioners who had business engaged in cryptocurrency? So like, did it violate some sort of constitutional right? That's what I mentioned, right? The second is, and I'm just kind of reading from Tanvi's article just to kind of make sure I sum up, the key points. So in doing so, did the RBI overstep its authority as a central bank and monetary policymaker? So that was one of the points that were brought into question, right? And was there justification for such an action, or did the RBI act arbitrarily, right? And these were the points that our lawyers essentially, fought the case on, right? And proved that in our favor. So, and then the last one, what is the nature of cryptocurrencies, and does their use necessarily imply criminal activity? That was kind of the final point. But again, there's a lot of nuances. Like I said, there's a 200-page, like the whole thing is public. Most people haven't read it, but for some of your listeners, they might be interested, like you said, for not a blueprint, but just like a way, or that it is possible. And again, by no means am I, trying to take credit for any of this. This is really just a testament to like Harish, Satvik, our Unocoin customers, our investors, like people who have supported us like all along the way. Yeah, big thanks to them.
Who is your primary clientele? Is it primarily entrepreneurs and small businesses in India? Is that who it is? Or
no, it's people like Coinbase customers, whoever wants to buy Bitcoin. Some of them are IT professionals, some of them are gold bugs, a lot of them are techies, young people, a lot of them are male, obviously, just because that's kind of skewed towards the Bitcoin world, but that's changing. Our engineering team and our company is actually mostly females, but our client base is pretty male dominant. But yeah, it's like our main offering is really for the main public in India at large, like meaning just anyone. It's not for design specific, but we do have within the Unocoin platform something that's like a bit more advanced, and that's like an order book exchange where traders can kind of go to town.
They don't need a bank account to do business with you. Is that correct, or do they?
At this point, to be frank, you do, because you need to send us money, and so but the reason, part of why I brought up that whole story around ATM machines and us not having banking, is it got us thinking hard about how do we bank the unbanked? How do we deal with them? Because, and we tried to make a few attempts. And by the way, both of those attempts, you might see something in the future from us, when we think the road is super clear, and we do think it is, but we are going to take more stabs at that last mile, more so than we have now. Currently, we have the ability to, settle the people's bank accounts.
Well, how does the Western Union and MoneyGram, stuff like that, do they operate in India?
Yeah, Western Unions
here in Mexico, it's basically, it runs through the convenience stores, which is like a hand fits a glove. So you don't need, I always said, the next move in Bitcoin is not going to come from banking the unbanked, because they're unbanked for a reason. They probably will never get banked, but they have some kind of an alternative. And the next major wave is going to be from the entrepreneur. And there's only two kinds of entrepreneurs: those that have Bitcoin and those that don't. And it's going to be, as these entrepreneurs that don't have Bitcoin shift over into it, that's going to be a huge sustainable wave that's going to go for a long time.
Yeah, we, for example, have APIs that allow others to build on top of our platform so that they can programmatically, like just say build something with a specific kind of use case that they want to use. Because ours is like, our platform is a bit of a Swiss Army knife. You can do a lot of things, but there are others out there who want to build on top of it, but don't want to do all the hard work and of like the banking and this and that. So they just want to have like a way to programmatically connect with us. So we enable things like that. We have e-commerce platforms, like I said. So if you're a store owner, you want to accept Bitcoin, but you don't want to actually accept Bitcoin because you have to explain it to your CFO or it's a card. So you want to just get the money, but you want to enable people to pay in Bitcoin. We have kind of an e-commerce platform for that, and just on and on. There's like, but all of it is really about Bitcoin, about, buying it, selling it, storing it, spending it. But it's really about, being able to live on Bitcoin.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, man, you're a hero, because like I say, it's the things that you're doing that's what's going to bring the next wave and the next use case. And this battle that you won, it's like it's like you just bulldozed up a great big mountain road, and now it's for us to go through and walk through it and maybe pave it and put some curbing on it and make it into a 4-lane highway eventually. But my head goes off to you, man. So
and the thing is, well, I appreciate that. I really do, and I'm kind of fortunate that I've been in this space long enough that I've just had a chance to meet people that are prolific. And another great guy, I don't know if you guys have been following the Canada scene, I was mentioning 3IQ, Fred, Pi, he ushered in, we have something called the QBTC, which is listed on the TSX. And that was because of a guy named Fred Pi, who again was told that he couldn't do it, was challenged, and he took, the securities commissioner here into court and commissioned to court and won. And now today, nice. I can hold Bitcoin in my TFSA, my RSP, because of that one guy, and so it's not just Unocoin. It's like, even Paycase. I think you guys have heard about Joseph Weinberg and these guys. They've been doing epic things. So it's just been, there's just like, there's signs of it everywhere. But it's not easy. It's not tough. It's like a long road, but it's definitely worth it,
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's this sort of air and this kind of meme in the Bitcoin industry, at least from my perspective, that Bitcoin will just succeed by its nature, and maybe that's just not the case, right? Like there's sort of like this sort of perception that this thing is bigger than all of us, and that the fundamentals are, but no, we actually need individuals to be brave and act properly, and aim for the thing to open the world to Bitcoin.
I think that's a really
story. But there's what we need to outline is how many people have gone down your road and they failed. There's a lot of dead bodies up there on Mount Everest, and that's
So for example, I read that the Supreme Court had only challenged and won against the RBI, I think once in history, like before this. So even the fact that the Supreme Court overruled the RBI was unprecedented. And, and I don't think it really got a lot of, kind of airtime, just because like the coronavirus hit, I think like a month right after that, and it was just a bit, but anyway, so hoping again I get the word out there. I think it's a big win for the community at large, and
it's a big win for India. It's really a big
win for India, man.
Really
big win
a
for
big
India.
win for India. You know, I'm
yeah,
so glad that. And
I'm super bullish.
It is a big win for India. And, you know, I know so many Indians and they're natural entrepreneurs all over the world. You know, Mexicans are also natural entrepreneurs too. They're just, so.
But Juan, you mentioned a word earlier that I think really resonates, which is that you need to be not just smart, but brave. You know, that's something that I think I lack. I definitely need more of, and I learned from others that is a quality that is not in abundance. There's a lot of smart people out there, a lot of hard workers, a lot of money and this and that, but like bravery is in short supply.
Well, our national anthem is, land of the free and home of the brave. And we really need that. And right now, I'm so, where are we? We are, land, we're what, land
of the
enslaved and home of the cowards. And but that can be, and it's not going to come from everyone. It's going to come from a few. It just needs a few good men that are courageous and have integrity. And that's where you're at. That's what I see. I mean, guys, it's a hard battle and you probably aren't going to win, but the only way you're going to win is to follow what Sonny Ray and his team have done. That's the way you win.
Maybe not the only way, but it's definitely one way to do it. And I think that's a really valuable story.
One of my favorite quotes is by this guy named Vinod Khosla, which is that success matters, failure is inconsequential. You take enough shots at the dartboard, you'll just look back to the times you won, and all the losses won't seem as significant. But you gotta try.
100%, you gotta try. Well, in that order of ideas, there's a couple of things I'd like us to finish on. Maybe we can just touch on the Bitmex story. I don't know if you're willing to share your thoughts. I don't know how well educated you are on it, but
I just wonder. So I don't think I think maybe I've met Arthur once, and I know what they do. I personally never use their platform. I know Arthur's obviously a very prolific character in the space. Yeah. And he's written some great blogs, and he's just he's very brave, if you will. But aside from that one, to be honest with you, I did, like I said, I worked for Kraken for a year, right? And so I've never worked for those guys. I've never worked with them. And so it's really hard for me to comment. And I don't, I prefer not to comment on things that I don't know a lot about.
This is battle to fight. And I don't, I'm just, like I say, I'm glad he's the point of the spear because he's perfectly called for it.
Yeah.
And, what our thing is, he doesn't need our help financially. He needs our support.
He needs support spiritually, and maybe legally, in some sense, right? A lot of the Americans are being used as, in my opinion, non-legal opinion, they're being used as hostages in a legal action against Bitmex, but Americans clearly want to trade there. So why are Americans not being allowed to sort of be free, so to speak? I think there's points there that need to be pushed, that need to be explored and expanded on. And it's going to have to be Americans that stand up for it, because that's the government that's attacking Bitmex right now, right? And this criminal lawsuit, I mean, it's going to get wild. I think we're just starting to see the transition to whatever's coming beyond this. And obviously 2020 does not disappoint, but we're gonna keep following this.
We should all be we should all be mindful and very awake during these times, because it's during these types of times, usually in history, when big changes are made and power, transfers of power occur. And it's usually not for the masses, it's for the a very select few. And so I think if through awareness and hopefully like just people talking about this shit online, you know what I mean? Like us, like the global consciousness starts to awaken a bit, you know, and they start to realize that, you know, that Bitcoin's the one.
Everybody's paying attention to the American elections and hiding in their houses from the corona fears. And while that happens, the people that are, you know, people in the background are making moves and taking this opportunity to change things.
You are an example of how to fight the battle. And that's what I'm saying. And so is my mentor, E.C. Harwood. I mean, I see the parallel so well. And you know what? That's why I just want to lift you up.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate it. And you know, if I could just leave with one thought, I do think that the battle now is moving towards like, I don't want to call it a battle, but I do think like the conversation, if you will, is moving more towards like regulators of regulators. So it's not even just national. It's more about like the people that, you know, regulate regulators, if you will. And I don't think anyone's really paying attention to what's going on there. And I think it's important. And I have a lot of questions around how some of these people, I guess, come into power. Are they voted in? Like, who are these people? And I think people need to just ask questions. That's all I'm saying.
Awareness. This is such a coordinated, vicious thing that's going on right now, and an attack. And you know, everywhere that we're doing the helicopter money in every nation, and that's my biggest red flag. I say, you know what? If they can just drop money into your bank account and your financial institutions, it can work at the drop of the hat in a decree. It can happen in reverse. And so if your exposure, you know, is in one jurisdiction in real estate and in your retirement account, you want to be moving as fast as you can so you have a backup plan, because if what they can give you, they can take away.
My parents were visiting over the last couple of weeks, and just yesterday my mom was asking, she was like, can the Canadian government's giving everyone money? He's like, how is that happening? You know, it's like, well, that's why we're in Bitcoin, because it's like,
well, you know what? They take and you know, they just announced, I think, now everybody gets a 30% haircut tonight. Here we are.
You got it. And again, like, you know, when we try to solve like big problems in the world, it's nice to just kind of be able to narrowly focus on like one thing. And that's what I love about Bitcoin. Again, you know, I have nothing against anything else. People can have fiat, they can have DeFi, whatever, this coin, that coin, but I just love Bitcoin.
There's very few people that have the and it's not just courageous. It's unyielding, the perseverance that, you know, you came up against one obstacle after another, and you were being beat down constantly, and you're bloody, and you stood back up and you kept fighting. That's what we got to do.
That's what we got to do.
You know, on my first week of like starting our business, we had 30 people from the tax department come to Unocoins front door. And I was actually, it was Christmas time. So I was in Colombia with my family there, and my wife's family. And I remember I called Satvik and I said, Satvik, you know, we don't need to do this. Like I saw on the news, all this shit was going down. I was like, we don't need to do this. Let's just hang up our gloves and move on to some other project. And it was Satvik that said, you know, if you're from Canada, you'll figure something out. But he's like, if I give up on Bitcoin today, my whole country loses out on it. And it's, but he's like, that's not going to happen. So it's really people like that I think, you know, somehow are able to, you know, make the invisible visible. You know, most people need to see it to believe it. But then there are others who kind of believe it before they see it, and I think that's people like that are hard to find.
Wake up! I think it is making the invisible visible. I think it really has doing that to a lot of people that just haven't seen. A lot of people they're blind and going to remain blind, but a lot of people that have been blind.
It's like, how do you deploy this pandemic strategy globally overnight, everywhere? Like, we travel here in Mexico sometimes to little towns in the middle of nowhere, and people are wearing masks. How did you get there? How did you reach that far? How did you scare people that much and implement this strategy? And now we're all stuck in this sort of gridlock of, you have to wear a mask because maybe they ask you to wear a mask even if the mask maybe don't work, right? Like the CDC is saying that like there's all these news kind of downplaying now the value of this strategy from as official sources as you can, and we're still in the same game now, right? Very, very strange things are happening. And yeah, I think that the veil is being lifted, on many fronts, right? So fascinating stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, it's just confusing. I mean, no comment.
I think what we need to do, we need to do on this one is he's got so much to tell that this can be a multiple story. I think it can be documented. If you like to do outlines and your little whiteboard, do a whiteboard, and let's do a regular show for an hour. Every week or a few days till we get this complete story out and catalog it. This is
for
really
sure.
good.
I think there's a lot of
for sure, and I can bring some of the other guys on too, and they can share their kind of pieces, sure. And would love to, and we really appreciate that. And definitely, always down.
I think this would be a classic, video, and it's kind of ageless where people can go back, because this is important stuff to get done and document.
We gotta keep hitting this story. There's a lot of individuals here.
Yeah, a lot of nuances. And Juan, you and I, we've known each other forever, man. So we're definitely down to help you guys out, and it helps us in a big way.
Yeah,
and
I had a story about Colombians. So when I was locked up, where I was at, the Colombians ran the prison, so because they were very good businessmen. And they, like I don't think they ever raised the cocaine. That's done in Bolivia, but they're the ones that marketed it.
Yeah, we sell it.
Yeah, and you guys buy it. Also, they were they were very very upfront, very straight. I mean, just gentlemen in every way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
yeah.
That experience, he hired me. Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Colombian was actually a plus.
I love Colombia. Oh yeah. Well, my wife's from there. We go back. Before when people could travel, we'd go a couple times a year. I love it. So much fun. Yeah, guys. It's been like almost an hour and a half. I don't want to bore your listeners either. I was gonna say, like I said, next week, Juan, you tell me when. I'll bring Harish or Satvik on. I'd love to have them, share their perspective, and then I could go down some rabbit holes in terms of I just kind of glossed over the high levels, but we can dig deeper on any front you guys want.
It's going to help other people in the space. I mean, in other countries. I mean, you really, this is groundbreaking what you've done. And I think it needs to be, while it's fresh, get it documented, get it down, because you're setting the path where, others need to follow. And that's,
hopefully they can learn from us and not make the same mistakes either, because part of it is making mistakes. But definitely want to at least let people know that it's possible, and this isn't just like something that's going to happen on its own. And if you sit back, then the question is, like 30 years from now, and you look back, are you going to be like happy with yourself? Aren't you going to want to do something?
No, the opportunities are now. Like the time to make moves are right now. Every choice we make right now is multiplied many times over, just because we're in this transition. And what settles in the next few years, and this year and this week and this month and the rest of 2020 and forward, is what's going to end up probably settling for generations. I really believe it. I think we're in this sort of huge transition into the sort of the next century, really.
Okay, Sonny, are you ready to make a fool of yourself?
That's right.
Always.
Okay, well, I teach Bitcoin. I keep it real simple. I'm a big believer in KISS. Keep it simple and stupid. And so I teach that we hodl, okay, and we save. By save, I like vitalik footer, and I bastardize the word savvy, and that means we cash out every now and again, and maybe upgrade our computer, take the wife out to dinner, or in my case, she's building a new house.
Gotta keep the wife happy.
Yeah, and then to keep her happy. And then the third thing we do is we build up. And you're a classic case where you're building on Bitcoin.
Love it.
I say, you know what? You don't have to build on Bitcoin. If you're a carpenter, be the best carpenter out there. If you got a car wash, be the best car wash in town. If you're a doctor, be the best family doctor, whatever kind of doctor. Just be the best of what you're doing. That's what Builder is, and it doesn't have to be on Bitcoin. My Builder is ugly old goat. So you're kind of trapped. I'm a ugly old goat trapped in an alpha male body. So that's so here's what we do. We kind of get up and we go. I should stand up and do. Let me get behind my Bitcoin stack here.
There we go.
I'm gonna follow your lead.
Ready? Okay, we go.
Hodl. Save. Builder.
Money. Sound money.
Very
good. Great show. Let's get this down. We need to document the whole thing. That's why we have the studio, man.
Yeah.
This is a
lovely.
story I'd love to get out.
So Juan, this is going to be recorded, right? And it's going to be on YouTube, or will it just be like a live stream?
It's already on YouTube. I'll send you the
already
link.
on. Oh man, love it. Okay.
Look,
we can do anything we want. Anything that makes sense. Yeah.
This is what this is all about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love the energy, guys. Okay, let's do it again.
Right on.
Talk soon. Bye bye.
How did the Toronto crew for us?
Yes, will do.
All right. Excellent. All right. Thanks everybody for coming on. Really appreciate your comments and your likes and you sharing the link. Tell other Bitcoiners about this. I think this is a really interesting story. We're gonna get better
at this. And I want to thank Juan and I want to thank Eddie, who's
not here right now, but
he's not here
around.
Now.
He helped us set it up. Yeah, for sure.
Building more and more. I want to make. We just want to make this thing look better and better and better as time progresses. So we're getting there.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. And yeah, I think we can make a real good documentary of what's happening here.
Right. All right.